Ladies and gentlemen, so welcome to the Mega Liverpool HorrorCon, and we're here with very good three authors. So we have Adam Nevil, Dave Moody, and Mr. Matt Smith. Hi guys. Matt Shaw. Why am I saying Matt Smith?
You know me.
It's you now. You're kicking. He's been winding me up all morning saying different names. I've just done it now. I said it right earlier. So guys, you all got very different kind of horror books. If many of you don't know, Matt Shaw has got really extreme horror books. Dave.
Adam.
Oh my God, my mind has just gone completely blank. So Dave, you got now El Toro work, isn't it? Can you tell us about that? You know, the autumn.
Yeah. Well, about 10 years ago, two of my books were optioned for film at the same time. One is a book called Autumn, which was sold to a really small independent company, and the other was a book called Hater, which was picked up by Guillermo del Toro, which was a very weird thing to happen. I used to self-publish stuff. I was kind of making a living from it, and I thought the more books I get out, the more chance I've got of doing this full time. So I released this book called Hater. Didn't think very much of it. It was doing quite well. Well, that's bright. Sorry about that. It was doing okay, selling quite well, and then suddenly out of the blue I had an email from Los Angeles with some guy saying we want to talk about the film rights. I thought it was a wind-up, so contacted all my mates who would typically do this kind of thing and found out that it was actually genuine, and it was Guillermo del Toro and a chap called Mark Johnson, who went on to produce Breaking Bad. He produced Rain Man and the Chronicles of Narnia films, and they optioned the book. Wow. Didn't do anything with it. Kept optioning it again and again over a series of years, but yeah, it's just great to be able to dine off Del Toro's name.
That's absolutely incredible. He's such an amazing sort of director, and to be involved with something like that, you know, from going from a book to actual being on film. You know, Matt, you're doing a film now, aren't you? You're about to you're producing Kickstarter sort of film called Monster, isn't that right?
Yeah, I sold some stuff to various production companies, so we sold the options for some books, but it's so hard to get the film actually go from anywhere other than being optioned that I kind of gave up, and I just put a project up on Kickstarter. And within 24 hours we funded it, within 48 hours we doubled the money, and now on the back of that we're setting up a production company of our own. And we start shooting the feature-length Monster in January. I won't lie, I have kind of messed it up quite a lot, because although I keep all creative control, because I've done the screenplay, obviously I wrote the book with another author, Michael Bray, I'm producing it, I'm casting it, but I got the budget slightly wrong. So we thought it was going to cost about £20,000. And so far, never mind the extras coming out of my pocket, it's just over £40,000. So it's not a cheap game to play.
No, most definitely. And you've got some, I've seen online, you've got some very good actors have come on. Am I allowed to mention that? You know, you've got Maxine from Coronation Street, was that right? So it's been great to have that kind of creative control of, you know, so being able to do stuff, what you want with the books. Like you see yourselves, you sold the rights as such, isn't it? How did you find that, Adam? You know, because you've got your book coming, a film out coming next week, isn't it? The Ritual.
It is, yes. It's out in the UK, 300 plus cinemas next Friday, the 13th. But it was my third horror novel. I've been writing horror I've been published since around 2002. And I have 10 titles now, but this was my third book. I wrote it in 2008, and it was under option with one company for a while. They wanted to renew it. It was a company that made From Hell. But like David said and Matthew, a lot of the options my books have had, you have meetings with some exciting people, and then nothing happens. So my expectations are always managed. I learned pretty quickly, I'll only get really excited if it's being filmed. And The Ritual was my third novel, so it was under option pretty much from when it was published in 2010. And then Imaginarium, which is a British film company, owned by Andy Serkis, who most of us will have heard of, and Jonathan Cavendish. And I met them in 2012 in Ealing, and I was so impressed. They were so enthusiastic, everyone in the company. I swapped the option from the company who had it to Imaginarium, and 5 years later, 2 directors, 4 scripts. It was filmed last October, and post-production's finished, and it's out next. So it's a sense of scale, I think, between 3 and 6 books I've usually got under option, and only 1 has ever gone to term. And I was told by my film agent that 1 in 100 books gets optioned, and 1 in 100 options gets turned into a film at some level.
Yeah, it's a very hard game, isn't it? You know, you write all these books and you really want it to get into a film because you see some of the stuff that you guys do, and they're really, really good, and it's really nice to be able to see the finished product. So, about yourself, David, what are your thoughts?
It's a really, really fickle industry, as Adam's saying. You've always got the possibility as well that when they do make a film of your book, as they did with Autumn, that it might not be so great. So my book Autumn was filmed in 2007, and on the face of it, it seemed absolutely great. Seemed like a decent script. They were saying all the right things. They got Dexter Fletcher, who you may have heard of, and David Carradine to star in it. And I went out to Canada to watch it being filmed. I got to play being a zombie and fight Dexter Fletcher in the snow at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is...
Who wouldn't want to do that?
Well, I'd never really thought about it until that moment, but yeah, it was good. It was good. But then about a year later, when they sent me the screener, and I sat down to watch it at home, and I watched it, and it's the most turgid pile of drivel that I'd ever seen. But you kind of take that leap of faith, and they say, here's some money, we want to make a film of your book, and really, you know, we go for it. I think the bigger the company as well, the less creative control you have. And one other thing that our ideas, they come at a premium to us, but I think to the big boys in America, they just take what they want. Because I also had, at one point, I had all my novels under option, one of them straight to you. I had a company that was very keen to option it, and then pulled out at the last minute, and then made the film anyway, but made it as a comedy. And the chances of me doing anything about that were absolutely zero. Me trying to take them to court was never going to happen.
It's quite difficult then, and you want them to be able to have your ideas in there, but then when they make it and it's not what you expect, can it be quite disappointing? Do you think, Matt, you know, with the Kickstarter you're doing now, it's good that you've got that creative control. So do you want to tell us a bit about, you know, the film that you're making, Monster?
It's a romantic comedy. I can't really say a lot about it because it is, you know, extreme horror, but it's a cross between the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Greek legend of the Minotaur trapped in the labyrinth. And it's trying to answer the question, you know, who's the real monster? You know, is it nature or nurture that creates these evil characters? And the book is very different to what we're actually filming in January, because we realized quite early on that we wouldn't be able to film the book and get away with it. Even though I have all creative control over this, I do have an executive producer on my back who is insisting that we fill the film with blood and gore, because that's what horror audiences supposedly want, which isn't necessarily true. And all the time I'm fighting with him, saying, you know, I don't want to film the gore as such. I want to leave more to the imagination of the viewer, because then they'll paint the picture, which is 10 times worse than anything we can get away with filming. Especially when some of the scenes in the book, like, without going into graphic detail, there's an incestuous scene between the mother and the son. No way can we show what we wrote in the book. So again, if everything happens on camera as a blur, we can get away with it. You guys make that worse in your own head. But yeah, I mean, even on this small level, the executive producer, who really, I mean, he's not in this country, so I can say it. He's a snot of a person. You know, he's put a little bit of money in and thinks that he can say what's happening. You know, even he at this stage is trying to tell us what to do. So I can't imagine what these guys would have to see their work go through in order to get anywhere. It sucks.
I would say I've had actually, over that 5 years, I've had a very positive experience because although I'm not part of the production team, I didn't write the screenplay, I'm not an executive producer, Imaginarium kept me in the loop. They showed me the scripts, they read the book so thoroughly, and the producers and the director, David, they really considered the book and they wanted to catch the spirit of it and the atmosphere. And I know that some parts would change. Even though I imagine the novel as a film, there's almost no point going into that relationship with some kind of head film if you're not part of the team, because it's a different medium. And the changes that they made to my story, they justified, and in the context of the film and making a 90-minute film work, they were sound. So my experience was very positive. You know, I found them actually much easier to deal with than publishers. They're the real horror story publishers.
Yeah, but that can be quite difficult. You know, Dave, publishing. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I started off publishing myself.
Last call for registration for the cosplay competition at the desk by the Hall of Horrors for the cosplay competition at 1 o'clock.
Is that supposed to happen? I'm not telling him to...
Sorry about that, guys.
So I started publishing independently, and I loved the fact that I had complete control over it. It was kind of just by chance I fell into it. I wrote a book that was traditionally published, sold a few copies, got another book written, and I thought, what do I do with it? And I ended up just giving it away online before everybody else was giving away books online. And so I like that aspect of it, and I do find it difficult moving to traditional publishers because you do lose a heck of a lot of the control. This is the cover we're having, or here's a choice of 3 covers we're having. Which one do you like? And they go with whichever one they like anyway. But ultimately, it's a very different business for publishers. They're sinking a large sum of money into it. When you're publishing independently, there's no outlay really needed. I like the idea, though, as we're on the subject of independence and what you're doing, Matt. I like the fact that we can now make films independently, because that's what I always wanted to do. When I left school, I just wanted to be a filmmaker, but back in the early 90s, there was just no chance of that happening. We didn't have the technology. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't do it at home. But now, things are completely different, so I like the idea of self-published movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely get what you're saying. You know, you've got Kickstarter now, you've got different kind of pledging, crowdfunding, you know, those kind of things. And if you want to make a film now, it's so much easier. You can just get the funding together, and that's what you're doing. And I just think it's absolutely incredible that you're doing it. And I really, think highly of you. I'm reading this book at the minute. I love it. I got to get these guys as well. But from going from a book to the actual movie. For any budding writers out there, how does that work then? What's the time periods? Like the time period of writing a book, then it going into film? If that kind of makes sense.
I think it just depends on the circumstances, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of books, I think, get optioned pretty much when they come out, but as Adam said, the gap between the option and the film actually being made, if it gets made, can be anything. Hate was optioned 10 years ago. We're still talking about it now in different variations, different companies, but it's how long is a piece of string, I think.
Yeah.
I think with mine as well, I mean, I think traditionally the hardest thing to get would be funding for a film. The Ritual was odd in that it had 2 offers of full funding right at the beginning, but then the film production company, they were quite small. They had lots of other projects as well. And David, who directed The Ritual, I did query, how, the length it takes from option, even if you've got finance, to making a film. And he'd said that everyone is connected to so many projects in that world, perhaps up to 30, and whichever one gets the trigger, as they say, you will go and make that, and so others can fall to pieces or be delayed and so forth. But when you think about all the variables and all the moving parts, and what a huge collaborative effort it is. I mean, there's 160 people made The Ritual. That was the size of the crew. I'm amazed that anything gets made, to be honest, because so much can go so wrong.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like literally, there's so many people, especially like with the main A-lister type of films, Hollywood films. They've got like thousands of people working on these movies. And then with the independent ones, it's a lot less. But I quite like that you've got a few people. Then it's more personal in a family sort of environment. So Matt, how do you get into writing?
By accident. When I was younger, I had a lot of anger issues, and I went to see a therapist because it's the thing to do. And they told me to start writing a diary, and I couldn't be bothered. Instead, I started writing my life story of how I think it went so tragically wrong. And I wrote it in such a way that it's filled with really dark, black comedy. And the people reading it were laughing at it, and then I gave it little cartoons as well and illustrated it. I released the book, I'm fine, because if someone says, how are you? No matter what my mood, I'm fine. And then from that point on, I enjoyed the whole process of writing, that I just carried on, and I started changing all the screenplays that I wrote as a little kid when I was like 10 to 15 years old, sitting in my bedroom tapping away on a keyboard. I turned all of those ideas into novellas, released them, and now today, just over 10 years later, I've got 200 publications out, and I've got another 6 books due out this year. So yeah, just a lot of time and effort.
No, Stephanie and Dave, for yourself?
Well, I think I touched on it a moment ago. I wanted to make films, but ended up writing. Because it was just a way to see the films, and I know, Adam, you were talking about when you were writing The Ritual, and you saw it as a film in your head. And I do exactly the same. I'm still just a frustrated director. So I do see things very, very visually in my head and just try and get that down. But I haven't really had a writing career as such. It's just been just a series of weird turns that I've taken. And I think it's all such a fickle business, publishing and writing. It's just right place, right time a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, I think that's with acting as well, definitely. It's got to be the right place, the right time, and just much luck. And there's a lot of rejection as well, isn't it?
Far too much rejection. We're very rejected. Feel rejected today, so after this, if you can all come to our corner, which is very quiet, sandwiched between the toilets and the food, I think. Yeah.
So has anybody got any questions for these guys? Please have some questions. Anyone? Oh. I have to come running now. Thank you so much.
Talked about creative control, which I understand when you let the studios do the film, you don't have much, I should imagine. But particularly with horror films, I sometimes see an adaptation of a book which I've truly enjoyed and got under my skin, and the movie of The Ruins comes to mind, where I felt that it took such a completely different path. Do you at any stage have any opportunity to talk about that with them or basically amend that? Because I remember that book was one of the scariest books I've ever read, and I saw the movie and I came out of it so disappointed, really. See, I hadn't done what I wanted it to do and ended on a happy note almost. Do you have any opportunity to address that at any stage?
I mean, with The Ritual, I was shown all of the scripts, and there was one early on where I felt the dialogue between the male characters was absolutely superb, but some of the horror elements I did feed back on, and I thought could be improved. In fact, I did write a lot of script notes, just I've read it, these are my thoughts, and they did take them on board. Right through the process, they always did listen to any suggestions I made. I mean, what they could have done, they had the option, they could have just made it any way they wanted to and never consulted me, but you know, that they were a very good company to work for. And that and a film called Breathe are their first two films that both come out this month.
You know when you completely lose your point, when it's on the tip of your tongue? Oh, yeah, I was going to say, what I was told when I sold the rights to Hater was that it works like this. There's a desert, and in the middle of the desert there's a fence, and you go up to that fence and you chuck your book over, and then they chuck some money over, and then that's it, you don't part, and then the film turns up in the cinema. And that was the extent of the creative control as it was sold to me. But I also did what you said you did, Adam, and that after the rights for Hater had gone round and around a few times, I took them back because I'd been speaking then to a producer based in Newcastle, and he really got the books and he understood them. And I looked at his film history, his filmography, and I really liked what he was doing. So although I don't think when film gets made I'll have a huge amount of creative control still, at least I feel better placed that it's gone to the right people.
Oh God, anyone got a question? Anything else? That went a bit bad then. Went up to you guys again, without tripping over. Well, I was just thinking, if you could think of a specific director that you would like to sort of direct your films, who would it be and why? Matt?
It's just you, isn't it, Matt?
Of course, me. I think I'd like to go with Adam. I'm probably going to get his name wrong. Darren Aronofsky. He's just made Mother, and when I watched Mother, I completely missed the whole point of the film, and took away something completely different from it. But there were parts in that film where I sat up and I thought, how the hell did they get away with filming this? So the guy has got a vision. I mean, especially if you've seen the film Requiem for a Dream, that film haunted me for years. So yeah, I think I'll choose him.
Very nice, Dave.
I would say David Cronenberg, because I'm a bit old school. And he actually read Hater, and that's enough for me. I'm happy now.
Adam.
Oh, I think I'd quite like David Lynch to have a go at House of Small Shadows.
Wow.
Maybe
Why?
Hyde.
And why?
It's a very weird book. It's the most speculative and weird of all of my books, in which I tried to capture how I felt as a child, the things that frightened me, but also enchanted me at the same time. Because I think often with horror, it's not just about terror. Within terror, I think there's wonder as well. And it's a mixture of those emotions I felt as a child. And before I forgot how I felt, I tried to get it into a book. As a result, it's my strangest book and my least popular book, but probably my most personal book. And it is very visual. And I think, David Lynch is just has that incredibly weird vision as a filmmaker. I can pipe dream.
Can't we all? So I think we've got time for another few questions if anyone's got any. Got anything you want to ask? Tell everyone. Last thoughts, guys.
Please buy a book.
What he said.
Yeah, I concur with my panellists, but if I can just, a little plug for The Ritual. It's out next Friday, 300 plus cinemas, an independent British film with an American director, and E1 have really gone out with a big promotion campaign, and I think horror fans will love it. I saw it for the first time on this Thursday in Soho with the cast and crew, and the monster is terrific. That's all I'm saying. It's the guy that did the special effects in Pacific Rim and Crimson Peak.
Wow.
Yeah, because in my novel, it's suggested. You never quite see. It's all hints and glimpses and suggestion. And I remember when David told me, he really wants a monster. This one is something else.
I think we definitely have to go and see that, guys. But everyone, guys, give it a big thanks to Matt Shaw, Dave Moody, and Adam Neville. Thank you so much for joining us and have a good day.
The ambiance.
Have some worms, Michael.